Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this very special edition on Salam Media, your humanitarian journalism platform with your host, Shabnam Palesa Mohammed. And today we're talking about the art of justice, or the use of the arts and the law to defend humanity, specifically Palestine, Sudan, and Congo. Joining me in conversation are excellent guests from both Africa and Asia. First up is going to be Dr. Nanda Subin. But before we get to Dr. Nanda Subin, I'd like to share some thoughts with you around why we've chosen this very specific topic of conversation today. Because the arts and the law play such a pivotal role in human rights. So we've gathered tonight to explore a very vital dialogue, one that happens in the space between two powerful languages, the precise language of human rights law and the profound language of human rights art. On one hand, we have the law, international law, human rights law. These are the framework, the charters, the conventions. They are the world's attempt to draw a line in the sand and say, here, humanity shall not cross. They speak in articles and verdicts documenting breaches and demanding accountability. They are the skeleton of justice. But law alone can feel distant. It can live in courtrooms and thick documents. So, on the other hand, we have art. The art that emerges from struggle is the flesh and blood and the spirit on that skeleton. It is the scream, the prayer, the memory. It is a child's drawing of a lost home, the poet's metaphor for siege, the filmmaker's lens on daily resilience. This art takes the violations catalogued by law and translate them into human experience. Tonight, we bring these two languages into conversation. We will see how a legal term like the right to return becomes a grandmother's story etched in embroidery. We will see how collective punishment is rendered as a chorus of voices in a play. We will explore how art does what legal briefs sometimes cannot. It makes us feel the urgency of the law, and the law gives a name to the injustices that art makes us feel. So let us begin this essential exchange. Let us witness how the statute meets the story and how together they form a more complete and more compelling picture of the struggle for justice in Palestine, in Sudan, in Congo, and indeed anywhere around our world. Joining us shortly is going to be Dr. Nanda Subin. I'm not sure if he is waiting in the background. If our producer could just let us know. We've had a bit of a shuffle in our program today. And so we were due to start with Professor David McCoy Mason, but we are shuffling the program. We've also got two guests from Indonesia who are doing their best to join us in the next segment. But we are now waiting for Dr. Nanda Subin, who's a very prolific artist. He is an award-winning artist, a political cartoonist, an animator, a historian, a humanitarian, and the founder of the Center for Fine Arts, Animation and Design, which is based in KwaZulu-Natal and was founded in the dawn of our democracy to provide these kinds of skills and services to the underserved, to the underprivileged, to young people who were looked over during apartheid and not given an opportunity to learn the kind of skills that he's learned over his years in South Africa, in exile, in other parts of the world, and then returned to start this very important school for human rights. And while we wait for him to join us, we're going to hopefully get hold of him. We're going to screen some videos. We're going to adapt as we go along. And this is from Nanda Subin, hopefully joining us shortly. But we're going to start the conversation then with some videos from this morning's engagement with Francesca Albanese, who is in South Africa at the moment. And Ponti Moletsane was there as a veteran journalist to ask a very important question around the role of the United Nations. So we're going to watch first the question that he asks of Francesca Albanese at this press conference today, and then we will watch her response to that question. So Sadiq, if you could play for us that first video of Ponti Moletsane asking that question of Francesca Albanese. What is the role of the United Nations? What is its relevance, given what we've experienced through Palestine?
Thank you. Look, I understand that the UN has many limitations, and it's clear that the UN was blessing the partition of Palestine, which is the beginning of the segregation of the Palestinians that they continue to endure today. I keep on saying the Palestinian people are scattered across not just their homeland as Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, residents of Gaza, residents of the West Bank, residents of East Jerusalem, and then the Palestinian diaspora, some still in refugee camps, others. I mean, they're orphans of a homeland that used to be one day and has been devastated. It might come back. We don't know. It depends on many factors. But yes, I wouldn't claim that the UN, which condoned and blessed the partition plan, is the same today. Actually, I think that the devastation today brings a greater responsibility on the UN, which is now made of 193 states. And the fact that the UN, the way it acts, departs so boldly from what it says, what it said in the General Assembly, which is more democratic. It doesn't translate into action. It means that the last centuries colonial mindset dominated or imperialistic mindset dominated world order that was the context of the creation of the UN is still there. And so I wouldn't throw away the baby with the dirty water in the sense that, yes, the UN has proven fallacious and ineffective in so many ways and still is the only multilateral system we have. I think that what is needed is and it goes in a way, this builds into the second question. It's a principled, ethical leadership that not only speaks the right words, and there is a lot to do about that, because again, I encourage you to read my next report while it comes out, but diplomacy has been one of the tools to justify and procrastinate this genocide, perpetuate this genocide, in the sense that even in the UN, words have been manipulated so as, and legal concepts have been betrayed so as to keep on protecting Israel and sheltering Israel from accountability. The concept of self-defense, for example. Israel had no right to invoke the self-defense under Article 51, which doesn't mean that I had nothing, had to do nothing after October 7. Of course it had to act, but it had to act within the boundaries of the law and not wage a war against the people it keeps under occupation, and it had kept, as far as Gaza is concerned, under brutal siege. So yes, it has betrayed that function. It has not worked effectively politically, but this is a reflex of a necessary and still unhappened emancipation of all members of the United Nations.
A powerful response there from Francesca Albanese. And before we discuss that, and while we wait for Dr. Nanda Subin, let's have a look at the question that was posed by Ponti Moletsane, veteran journalist with Salam Media.
Ponti Moletsane from Salam Media. I just want to ask my question by quoting your tweet, which was published on the 25th of March. This was after Israel has carried out an attack which claimed over 100 people's lives. You started off by saying that the UN's decision to reduce its presence in Gaza risks repeating past UN failures in Srebrenica and Rwanda. The UN must uphold its duty to do everything in its power to prevent the genocide. Just wanted to find out what is the relevance of the United Nations, especially given that it was central to the division of Palestine, and it continues to maintain the status quo through the United Nations Security Council. Your comment on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If we take the gentleman next to Thabo,
Very important question there posed by Ponti Moletsane. What is the relevance of the United Nations? And he references a tweet that Francesca Albanese posted on X in March 2025, referencing Rwanda and Srebrenica, and of course, the role of the UN not only in the division of Palestine, but in maintaining the status quo through, for example, the Security Council. And her response is very interesting to watch. I would urge you to listen to the words that are used in describing the ineffectiveness of the United Nations, the talk about the fact that it is currently the only multilateral system that exists, and that is, of course, currently, together with talking about principled leadership. I think it was a very powerful question and an equally interesting response. And so if you have viewers out there who are able to transcribe that video and make it available to the public to pour on what meaning of that word is in a context where we also have genocides in Congo and in Sudan right now, what does that mean for the people in these three parts of our world? And of course, for other wars, conflicts, and genocides that are no doubt being experienced. I see Dr. Nanda Subin has joined, but he will be on audio because he's struggling with camera. That is unfortunate, but let's draw him into conversation. I think we may have him in the background. Dr. Nanda Subin, can you hear us?
Yes, Shabnam. Hi.
Wonderful. Thank you
I
for
can hear
joining
you.
us. Well, we have already introduced you as an award-winning artist, political cartoonist, animator, humanitarian, and the founder of the Center for Fine Art, Animation, and Design. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, you might have just seen this clip with Francesca Albanese this morning being asked a very important question by Ponti Moletsane about the role and the relevance of the United Nations within the context of Palestine, but of course also by extension the genocides in Sudan and in Congo. Earlier this year, you created an art piece of Francesca Albanese, which was presented at an ILCP conference in Turkey, and a month later was handed over in person to her from a lawyer in the Netherlands, Maaike ter Horst. And of course, Francesca was quite pleased. It's important that she is in the country and, of course, engaging in various meetings. And, of course, there's going to be a lecture about the role of academia, essentially, in liberation. And that's going to happen this Friday, the 24th. But thank you very much for joining us. And I really wish the camera would work. But you have a long and illustrious history in using your skills to highlight both the horrors and the hope as it relates to human rights. Why is this kind of art so important to you, as opposed to, just random commercial art that looks aesthetic but doesn't really have a meaning? It doesn't really speak to the food for thought that society desperately needs.
The thing is, art is an amazing talent that's God-given. And when we just paint flowers or landscapes and sell it just to stick it on a wall, it becomes meaningless. It can be a powerful tool. Also, art is accused of thinking on one side of the brain. But me being a cartoonist, I have to think with all my neurons on all sides of my brain to come up with an idea. When I do a cartoon, I don't come up with an idea. I think about the situation and the idea comes out of it. We need to think. The biggest problem we have is we all think in compartments, and that's the biggest problem in the whole world today. We have different compartments. It's religion, it's racism, it's tribalism, it's misogynistic. I mean, men thinking about themselves. And then the biggest problem of the lot, the biggest compartment of the lot is ego. That's the biggest problem. As a cartoonist for 40 years, I've seen only stupid men. And that's the biggest problem in the world. Cost to ego.
Speaking of ego, and given your humble work and much lauded work in the area of arts and human rights art in particular, all these decades later, is it clearer to you now that what we face is actually a class war, which is the 99% of humanity, whether left or right or black or white, of any religion, basically against the 1%, the oligarchy, very much represented by the technocracy and people like Elon Musk. Has that become a lot clearer in your work?
Yes, it's always been like that, because the problem about privilege, when the 1% are the people with privilege. You know, Elon Musk is worth over 500 billion. And now there's only 9 billion people in the world. He can feed all of us every day and take care of all of us, and we'll be living in a happy world. In fact, those guys are so stupid. In America, they want to take away the Medicaid to get a tax cut, and they are billionaires, and they will never spend that money in their lifetime. And how stupid is that? And when I say stupid, I don't mean they are stupid. They are intelligent, but they just live in those compartments. It's all about themselves, and those compartments are guarded by ego and privilege and racism and tribalism and things like that. They basically don't really think about anything else besides themselves.
Now, Donald Trump is certainly one of your favorite characters to lampoon, and you've done a considerable amount of work using your art to highlight the horrors, the hypocrisies, and hoping to wake people up to the fact that whether it's Republican or Democrat, it is two wings of the same bird. It is the uniparty, and no matter who is elected as the front man, it is still the oligarchy that's running the world. But he, of course, has caused immense damage, from his attitudes towards Africa to his attitudes towards immigrants, and of course, basic sexism, misogyny. And there are allegations that he is named in the Epstein files, which is why those files have not been released. What has been the response to your cartooning on Donald Trump?
Well, the thing is, in South Africa, when I was doing Zuma cartoons, all the white guys used to love me for it. And then when I do Donald Trump cartoons, they actually get angry. And I mean, the thing is, some of these guys have been decent friends of mine, and they love Donald Trump. And it goes back to the same thing about thinking in compartments. A lot of, the biggest problem in the world today is not just the rich white oligarchy. It's most white people think that they feel afraid for something or another. I don't know why. I mean, I lived through apartheid, and I've been through the worst. And yet these guys think that they feel insecure. I don't know why people are feeling insecure. The minorities in this country, they picked the white Afrikaners. They should have picked the colored people. They are the downtrodden minority in this country. I mean, if you look at the kids that were shot this morning because of drug-related situation and the way they're living, they just don't have jobs. The best artisans in South Africa used to be the colored people. And now to get something fixed in your house, you got to get a guy from Malawi living somewhere in Durban. You could get someone to call him or whatever to come and fix your pipes or your lights. And yet the colored guys have no jobs. They are a minority. But Donald Trump was looking at the white guys as the minority who are suffering.
Well, we do know that he fell for certain allegations around white genocide, which AfriForum had backtracked. But it was an excuse to essentially perform regime change in South Africa, the way that US imperialism has done in Iraq and other parts of the world. We do also currently have a very controversial hearing based on the revelations by General Mkhwanazi about the disbandment of the Political Killings Task Team, but also other allegations around crime and corruption in our country. Have you been following this hearing, and what comes to mind for you as a human rights activist and artist?
The thing is, I just want to go back to Donald Trump once the regime change in South Africa. Actually, it's written down in the Heritage Foundation 2025. Okay, all the countries that the white colonialists ruled in Africa and in America, they want to retake it. If you look at what's happening in Venezuela, they are bombing ships, bombing boats. It's just an excuse, because if you want to stop drug dealers, you got to stop them in the sea. You have the ships. They have a navy that can stop them, check what they have. If they have drugs, they can arrest them. You cannot kill people by dropping bombs on them. Those are fishermen. The thing is, according to Heritage 2025, they want to take back all the white countries that they lost. They're talking about South Africa, Rhodesia, Cuba, Venezuela, Chile, and Argentina, and Uruguay, to take it back. And then they also want to lynch gays. They want to lynch black people, people of color, and they want to make America white. So they want to have these white supremacist countries, South Africa, like it used to be, a white America, a white Argentina. You know what Argentina was doing to people of color? Millions of people
But of
disappeared.
course, Dr. Subin, it is about the resources. Venezuela has more oil than any other country in the world, and South Africa also
Well,
is
that
rich
too
in
as well.
mineral resources.
Racism and resources.
Racism and resources. Let's have a look at some of the cartoons by Dr. Nanda Subin, and let's ask him to talk us through some of this very, very powerful work that he's done, at least over the last 2 years. Sadiq, if you could bring them on one at a time, and let's hear his comment on what motivated this particular cartoon.
I can't see it at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to come up shortly. Dr. Nanda
Good.
Subin's also launched a book.
Okay.
So let's have a look at this first cartoon, where the Palestinian is saying to the IOF, we don't call them soldiers, of course. You mean God told you to do this? Talk us through this piece, Dr. Subin.
Yeah, I mean, we look up to God. Okay, I'm not religious. I think there is a God. But when people say things like this, they are basically insulting God. They're insulting the intellect of God. The thing is, how would God say such a stupid thing? If he wanted to create a space for the Jews, he would have made them indigenous to some part of the world. But they were not indigenous to Palestine. There were Jews in Palestine. Those Jews were Palestinians. There were Christians in Palestine. They were indigenous to Palestine. There were Muslims in Palestine. They were indigenous. Palestine was a country with Jews, Muslims, and Christians living. And the thing is, Winston Churchill came up with this stupid idea because he did not want, when they liberated Europe, the Jews went as refugees to Britain, and Winston Churchill said, we don't want to become Yiddish, we are British. So they tried to find a way to send them to the Middle East. The Jews had no reason to go to the Middle East in the first place when they were living in Europe, because they owned Europe financially, musically, artistically. Mozart, all of them were Jews. They had no reason. The only reason they went there is because the two countries were fighting against each other, and those two countries, because of the egos, one country was making the Leyland, the Rolls Royce, the Rover, and the other country was making the Mercedes Benz, the VW, and the BMW. These two countries were actually fighting a war, and they were so sophisticated. Because of ego, they were fighting against each other, and they are the ones who caused this problem with the Jews and Palestine. And then,
right, and of course, Israel has been described as a military base for U.S. imperialism. Let's have a look at your next cartoon, Dr. Subin. Sadiq, if you could please bring that up. Talk us through this particular piece, Doctor.
Well, there's a bomb being shot out of Donald Trump's butt. I mean, he's talking about making peace. He hasn't made any peace anywhere. I mean, he's attacking Venezuela, and he wants a peace prize, and there is no ceasefire in Palestine. The Israelis are still bombing the Palestinians. There is no peace. The
Absolutely.
the
So they want a
hostages
piece of
were
Palestine. They don't
released.
actually want peace.
Yeah, it's not peace, it's peace. What you got to see the different pieces. Well, it's turning it into little
Mhm.
pieces at the moment.
Of
It's a good
course, and
idea
the
for a
point you
cartoon.
make around the ambitions to enforce what they call Greater Israel by colonizing all of Palestine and other countries in the area, that mentality of Zio imperialism is also present in Africa. We see the blood diamonds in Congo is related to Israel. We see the genocide and starvation in Sudan. We know that Israel and the US are supplying
Mhm.
arms to the RSF. So we have much in common with Palestine. And therefore, when we have these conversations, we draw them into conversation together. And then the irony of Donald Trump wanting or demanding a Nobel Peace Prize for having created such chaos in the world, all to
And
benefit from suffering.
like I said, it's ego. I mean, ego is the most powerful thing in the world. That's why we have wars. We have people that all human beings should be living till the age of 100 years old. We die because of war, we die because of murder, we die because of car accidents, and we die because of junk food which Americans introduced to the world, and their tablets, their medicines, which is basically junk. That's why people die. And it's all based on one thing: ego, to make more money.
Absolutely. Profit over people. But here at Salam Media, we are people over profit. Let's have a look at your next cartoon.
I did this cartoon on Christmas Day. You know, this thing with Father Christmas visiting kids and going down the chimney and dropping uh, their presents. Here, there's a bomb being thrown into a chimney in Palestine, in Gaza. And it's a true reflection of what was happening on Christmas Day. That's where they said Jesus was born, in Bethlehem. And that was a bomb being dropped in Bethlehem, in Gaza.
Absolutely. The irony is not lost on us or them, but certainly Christians are being erased out of Palestine, out of the narrative. Meanwhile, churches are being bombed at an alarming rate, and it appears as if Christians are starting to realize they're being used essentially as cannon fodder in the ambitions of Zio imperialism. Let's have a look at your next cartoon, Dr. Subin.
I did this cartoon 11 years ago, and these incidents are happening right now, where they're shooting little boats. Uh, these boats are carrying food, and they actually, lucky the South Africans who went there didn't get killed. They would have got killed. I think maybe the name Mandela was there, so they probably showed some mercy. I'm not sure, but they could have just dropped a bomb and killed. They've done it previously. That's when I did this cartoon, where they killed a lot of people who were taking supplies to Gaza and the West Bank.
Absolutely. And nothing has changed since then. But humanity certainly is realizing we can only rely on each other and not our governments. Next cartoon, Sadiq, do you have the one with the nurse, Razan Al Najjar? This is a more recent one. Talk us through this piece.
I actually didn't post this because what happens is I did not. There are lots of stupid people who are believers, and I did not want to give them a platform to attack me by posting it. Uh, it's an important cartoon to post. I didn't have it published because it gives that's been happening throughout the ages where they go on the attack and the things get forgotten. Now I use Mandela there because he's one of the most important people who ever lived, basically. And these believers say Jesus saves. Now Jesus came from the same place. Why isn't Jesus saving? We got to uh, look at beliefs. It just does not help. and Jesus is looking up like he always does. Uh, you know, he's not uh, he's not basically interested in what in his hometown or whatever. And Mandela is asking him. Mandela is saying, Jesus, please save your homeland from a genocide. And you know those words. Anyone could say those words if you're not stuck in a belief. But we don't say those things because we don't want to hurt some of our friends, some of our family, and these people who are believers, they are stupid. Basically, I'm talking about those guys who live on the Bible Belt in America. Donald Trump is actually taking away the Medicaid, and they still suck up to him. And they still, if Donald Trump dies tomorrow, MAGA will become a religion, and they will build a big church with a statue of Donald Trump there, and they will worship him every year or every day, whatever.
Well, I'm sure he'd want that very much. I do know that there is an art installation in front of the White House of Trump and Epstein holding hands and skipping along together. How they managed to install that piece is actually quite something, but speaks very powerfully to the fact that the world is essentially run by Satanists and pedophiles, and often they're one and the same. Let's have a look at the piece, a very powerful piece of Razan al-Najjar, who is the nurse who was murdered during the March of Return, the Great March of Return in Palestine. And then, of course, we have a second Netanyahu cartoon, and then we'll take a look at the cover of your new book. All right, we're just waiting for Sadiq to bring that cartoon up on the stream. It is Nurse Razan al-Najjar, who was murdered while tending to victims who were being shot during a peaceful direct action march to the fence. There is no border, right? There is no border. It's all Palestine. And she was tending to children and adults and elders who were being shot by the IOF for having the nerve to march for peace in the Great March of Return. And I remember quite clearly the trauma that I and many other people felt. Okay, this is your new book. We'll come back to those two cartoons. Talk us through your new book, Dr. Subin.
My book is called Shut Your Pothole. It's a true story. Yeah, it's 30 years of cartoons, and it precedes 30 years. I have a lot of anti-apartheid cartoons in it, and then I go into the Mandela years, I go into the Zuma years, I go into Thabo Mbeki's years, and Cyril, and I do a lot of international cartoons with Donald Trump and the hypocrisy of the West, and I do a lot of Palestinian cartoons.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I wonder whether we have those last cartoons before we round up the conversation with you. Yes, this one, 2011. Go ahead.
I think it doesn't need any explanation. I mean, Netanyahu is saying not that we don't like the Palestinians, we worship the ground they walk on, which is, if you look at it from another angle, yes, they do worship the ground the Palestinians walk on. That's why they stole it. It's not that they like the Palestinians. You know, that phrase is for people you love. I worship the ground, like people who like Mandela, they would say, I worship the ground Mandela walks on. But this is seen differently.
Absolutely. And there he is at the United Nations lying again. Do we have that last cartoon, Sadiq, of Razan al-Najjar on the ground, the Palestinian nurse? If not, we'll draw our conversation to a close. Dr. Nanda Subin, of course, your cherished dream is to have many more political cartoonists and to be training many more artists as young people. So what is your message to young people in particular who are considering pursuing art and have a passion for human rights?
We're talking about the ego is I had an art school when I came back from America. The first art school that taught cartooning and animation. And I trained the first African black cartoonists in this country. I mentored them, like Yalo, the Sowetan Wilson at Independent, Cups at Izol Liswa, Nati at the Citizen. And these guys started attacking corruption, which is what they should have been doing, because that's what was happening in the country. This country had riches, but it was all stolen. I mean, take a guy who bought 3 blue Maseratis. He actually stole from a hospital to buy those Maseratis. It could have saved so many lives. And that's what these young black cartoonists were doing. They were picking on. And then, as part of the Mayabuya project, which was made to keep a certain politician's image clean, they actually shut my school down. They took away my accreditation. And now I'm trying to reopen. The thing is, I don't need to reopen the school, but it's such an important school. Shabnam, you manage that school.
Absolutely.
It's far more important than I will ever be as an artist. I actually opened up all the minds, because we don't just do art, we don't do painting, we do creative thinking. And students sit with me and have a coffee and we chat. We chat about things, we chat about issues, we open up the minds. And not just, and we deal with autistic kids, kids with ADHD, and they are on another level of intelligence and people don't know that. We just open all those neurons up. And you've seen what we did in 10 days of the Young Artist Program, what we did in 10 days. We made them sing, we made them dance, and we made them draw, and we made them animate Mandela dancing with them for his birthday. And that was the most
Absolutely.
amazing thing.
And I saw the transformation in these young people in the Young Artist Program, as well as the art therapy program with survivors of
Yes,
gender-based violence. So certainly, art changes the world faster than politics does. And we're so grateful for the work that you do with such commitment and compassion, and of course, a sense of humor. Thank you very much, Dr. Nanda Subin, for joining us today on Salam Media.
Pleasure.
Well, that was Dr. Nanda Subin joining us from Durban on Salam Media. We are running over the schedule currently. We have guests both from Africa and Indonesia and adapting as we go along. But stay where you are. In our next segment, we'll be talking to an Indonesian law professor and a law graduate, training young law students and young lawyers to defend humanity against wars and genocides. My name is Shabnam Palesa Mohammed, and see you on the flip side.